There's this one story from 9th century Ireland that is just persistent. It's all about a powerful Irish king who gets his hands on a Viking leader and drowns him. Now, that part is totally real. But there's this other version you hear, a kind of upgrade to the story, that he did it twice. So, today, we're going to dive into this and pull the history apart from the legend. So, yeah, this is the big question, isn't it? It feels a little too perfect, a little too neat. Did one single king, Máel Sechnaill, really get rid of two of his biggest Viking enemies in such a dramatic and frankly identical way? Let's find out. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. I mean, the reason this story has stuck around for more than 1,000 years is because it's an amazing story. You've got your hero, your villain, and this unforgettable, brutal act of justice. But let's be real, the most satisfying stories aren't always the most accurate ones. All right, so our story is centered on one king, but it's really about two different drownings. The first one, that's a confirmed historical fact. It's the rock this whole legend is built on. The second one, well, that's where we get a case of mistaken identity that actually tells us something way more interesting about what was really going on in Viking Age Ireland. So let's meet the man himself, Máel Sechnaill Máele Ruanaid. This guy was a king of Mide, which was a huge kingdom right in the Irish Midlands. He'd eventually be considered a high king of Ireland. He was, to put it mildly, a major player in a very violent and messy time. He was a man who knew how to make a statement. Okay, let's get into it. We'll start with that first drowning, the one that is absolutely, without a doubt, in the historical record. This is the foundation of the whole myth, and it involves a Viking leader known as Turgesius. Now, to really get what happened, you have to understand our main source, the Irish annals. These things are not history books in the way we think of them. They don't give you flowery language or deep character motivations. No, they are brutally short, year-by-year entries. They just drop facts into the timeline like stones into a lake, and we're left to figure out the ripples. And here it is. This is that first stone. The entry for the year 845 in the Annals of Ulster is so stark, so clear. There's no big battle scene, no dramatic chase. It's just captured, then drowned. The Viking leader, whose name is written Turgesius here, meets his end, and Máel Sechnaill is the one who did it. This is our bedrock fact. And just so you know, this isn't some made-up mythical place. Loch Uar is Loch Owel, a real lake in County Westmeath, Ireland. You can literally go there today. It's a quiet place, but it's this very real, tangible link to this very cold, very real event from the 9th century. So this is how a legend gets started. That one little sentence from the annals, that's the only early record we have of this guy. Later on, other writers would turn Turgesius into this ultimate pagan supervillain, a total tyrant. But none of that is in the original source. All those juicy details were tacked on centuries later, usually to push some kind of political agenda. Okay, so we've locked down one Viking drowning. So where in the world did this second one come from? This is where the story gets really twisted. It's all about another drowning and a completely different man. Let's look at the second stone that gets dropped into the water. And here's something that's absolutely crucial to understanding this. These two events were not like back-to-back victories over Vikings. They happened 6 years apart. The first, we know, was in 845. The second one doesn't happen until 851. That time gap is really, really important. See, the setup for the second drowning is completely different. It's not about an invasion. It starts with an internal Irish power struggle. You have another Irish king, a guy named Cinna Mac Conning, who decides to rebel against Máel Sechnaill's authority. And to do it, he hires some muscle. He makes an alliance with Vikings, who the records just call the foreigners. And here's the annal entry for 851. Máel Sechnaill wins the fight. But just look at who he drowns. Kined, son of Coning, an Irish king. And notice the language the writer uses here. It was a cruel drowning, and he did it in spite of the guarantees. This wasn't the execution of a foreign enemy. This was a treacherous political hit on a rival from his own country. So now we have the two main pieces of our puzzle, right? We have one drowned Viking leader and one drowned Irish king. Let's put them side by side and see how this messy reality got flattened out into a simple, heroic legend. And boom, here it is. This is the whole thing in a nutshell. The popular myth is simple. It's patriotic. Our heroic king drowns two evil invaders. The real history, though, is messier. It's more complicated, and honestly, it's way more interesting. He drowned one foreign enemy and one of his own countrymen in a cold-blooded power play. This table just lays it all out perfectly. Let's walk through it. In 845, the victim is Turgies, a Viking. The context, it's war. You captured an enemy invader. The legacy, it becomes a heroic legend. Now look at 851. The victim is Kened, an Irishman. The context is a treacherous betrayal of a rival. And its legacy? Well, its legacy is that it got all jumbled up and confused with the first story. So why does any of this matter? Because it's a perfect reminder that history is rarely a simple story of good guys versus bad guys or us versus them. 9th century Ireland was this chaotic, complicated web of alliances that were constantly shifting. You had Irish kings fighting other Irish kings, and sometimes they'd hire Vikings to help. You had Vikings fighting other Vikings. It was all just politics, brutal, local, and opportunistic. So, after peeling back all those layers of legend, what's the hard historical fact we're left with? How many Viking leaders do the earliest records actually say Máel Sechnaill drowned? The answer is one. Just one. And this brings us to a really fascinating question. I mean, if the sources are this clear, how does a myth like this even take hold? How do two totally separate events get merged into one clean, simple, but completely wrong story? Well, it's a slow process, kind of like a game of telephone that lasts for centuries. First, you have this incredibly dramatic, memorable event. The king drowns the Viking. Then, just a few years later, something similar happens. The same king drowns a rival. Over hundreds of years of people retelling the story, the details get fuzzy. Who was that second guy again? Oh yeah, he had Viking allies, right? And eventually, the story just simplifies itself into something much neater and more heroic. He drowned 2 Vikings. It's a way better story for sure, but it just isn't what happened. And maybe that's the real lesson here. The original records, the annals, they weren't trying to entertain anybody or build a legend. They just gave us the facts, those little fragments of truth like stones dropped into a lake. It's the generations that come later who shaped those facts into a story they want to hear. And in the process, they leave all the messy, inconvenient bits behind, swallowed by the water.